He's married. So why does he still want you? Have you ever felt that piercing gaze of a married man? That awkward moment where his eyes say so much more than words? Maybe it was at work, at the gym, or even a close friend of the couple. He talks about his wife, he mentions his family, but there's something in the air, an inexplicable tension. Conversations that extend beyond what is necessary. A closeness that seems innocent but is not. And the burning question inside is, why the hell does he do this? If you have a home, a family, a commitment, what does he look for in you? The answer goes far beyond the obvious, because all men are equal. In fact, there are deep psychological layers, unresolved shadows, and emotional holes that turn married men into pursuers of something they themselves don't understand. Today we're going to dive into the dark side of the male psyche and unravel the real reasons why he, even committed, still wants you. Get ready, because this truth may shock you. 1. What he missed by saying, "Yes, I do." When a man gets married, something curious happens in his psyche. It's as if a door closed and on the other side everything he was before the commitment remained. The freedom to be unpredictable, to not have to give satisfaction, to wake up on a Saturday and simply disappear all day without explanation. All of this is left behind, and at first, he gladly accepts. After all, love seems to make up for any loss. But over time, that feeling of having given up important parts of yourself starts to hurt. It's not about wanting to betray or being a villain. It's about feeling like pieces of one's identity have been sacrificed on the altar of marriage. He looks in the mirror and barely recognizes who is there. Where did that spontaneous guy go? The one who made impulsive decisions and lived every moment intensely. Carl Jung talked about this when he said that every commitment requires a symbolic death. To be born the husband, a version of the man must die. The problem is that this death is not always voluntary or conscious. Often, he simply swallows this loss and moves on, believing that this is the way it should be. But the unconscious does not forget. Deep down, that man who died continues to scream, asking to be seen, to be lived again. And that's where you come into the story. You're not just an attractive woman. You are a portal to that version of him that was buried under the responsibilities, the bills to pay, the dinners with his wife's family, the discussions about which sofa to buy. When he looks at you, he's not just seeing who you are. He is seeing a chance to find who he was again. This explains why his interest often seems adolescent, almost immature. Because that's exactly what's happening. He's trying to relive a phase of life that ended too soon, before he was ready to let it go. Marriage arrived and brought with it heavy expectations, rigid social roles, a predetermined identity of how a good husband should look and act. The point is that no one teaches men how to integrate these losses. No one sits down with him and tells him that it's normal to miss who you were before, that it is possible to be a husband and still keep that spark of inner freedom alive. Then he smothers all of that, pushes it under the rug, and years later explodes in the form of an inappropriate interest in someone who represents everything he has abandoned. You become the embodiment of lost youth, of dead spontaneity, of adventure that never happened again. And he looks to you not for a real relationship, but for an experience, a sensation, the illusion, even if only for a few moments, that he is still that free man he once was. It is a desperate attempt to recover what is gone, without realizing that time does not come back and that the only healthy way out would be to make peace with your choices, not run away from them through someone else. 2. You represent the life he didn't live. There is a powerful concept in Jungian psychology called unlived life. It's all those paths that were left behind, the choices we didn't make, the versions of ourselves that never came to fruition. For a married man, this unlived life can become a silent obsession that eats away at it from within. Think about it. How many times must he have wondered what it would have been like to have chosen another career, another city, another lifestyle, and especially another woman? Not because the wife is bad, but simply because the human mind is curious and will always wonder about the untrodden paths. It is in our nature to imagine the what-ifs of existence. The problem begins when these what-ifs cease to be just passing thoughts and become constant fantasies. He begins to mentally construct an alternate version of his own life. In this version, he is braver, more successful, happier, And of course, he's with someone different, someone who represents everything that your current life is not. And suddenly, you appear. Perhaps you have different physical characteristics than your wife. Maybe it's younger, or it has a different energy, or it represents a lifestyle that he admires but never had the courage to live. It doesn't matter exactly what it is. What matters is that you fit perfectly into the fantasy that he has been building for years in his head. You don't have to do anything at all. Just by existing, you are already feeding this internal narrative of his. Every casual conversation becomes fuel for the imagination. Each smile of his becomes confirmation that that alternative life would be even better. He begins to project qualities on you that you may not even have, because he is not really seeing you. You are seeing a symbol, a representation of everything that was left behind. Jung said that we live not only the life we choose, but we also carry the weight of all the lives we don't choose. This weight can be unbearable, especially when we look around and realize that we are stuck in a routine that no longer thrills us. Marriage, which should be a source of joy, becomes a constant reminder of all that has been sacrificed. And here's the crux of the matter. He doesn't really want you. He wants the idea from you. He wants the possibility you represent. He wants the fantasy of starting over, of having a second chance, of living that other life that has always been kept in the back of his mind. You are the embodiment of a regret that he may not even know he has. This explains why many married men who effectively end their marriages to be with the other person end up disappointed, because reality can never compete with fantasy. Unlived life always seems better than any real life, because it exists only in the imagination, where everything is perfect and there are no bills to pay, silly arguments, or boring days. What he seeks in you is impossible to find, because it doesn't exist. It is an illusion constructed by a mind that refuses to accept that all choices in life involve loss, that choosing one path naturally means giving up others, and that maturity is not in living all possible lives, but in making peace with the life we actually choose to live. If this video made you feel something you couldn't quite explain, it's because some desires aren't logical, they're psychological. In the pinned comment, you'll find the Jung Method, a guide to help you understand why he still wants you and what that says about the unconscious bond between you. In 3, the void that no marriage can fill. Here's an uncomfortable truth that no one likes to admit. There's a kind of loneliness that only those in a long-term relationship know. It is different from the loneliness of being alone. It's worse. It is to be next to someone and still feel completely isolated, misunderstood, invisible. And many married men live in exactly that state. They wake up next to their wife every day, but they don't feel truly seen. They talk about practical matters, about children, about what is left to buy in the market, but never about what they really feel. Never about the fears, the doubts, the dreams that they still carry. Over time, marriage turns into a functional partnership, efficient but emotionally dry, and this emptiness is growing. Silently. He doesn't talk about it because he doesn't even know how to put it into words. How to explain that you are next to someone but feel deeply alone? How can we say that marriage has become an automatic routine where the two are more roommates than lovers, more partners than soul partners? Jung understood that every human being has a fundamental need to be recognized in his or her entirety. Not only in the social roles we play, but in the essence of who we are. We need someone who looks inside us and says, "I see you. I understand you. You're not alone." When this does not happen within marriage, the man begins to look for this recognition elsewhere, and you emerge as a possibility to fill that void. In conversations with you, he feels like he can be more authentic. Who can talk about things that matter? That someone is genuinely interested in what he thinks and feels. This is intoxicating, because it has been years, maybe decades, that he has not felt this at home. What makes it all the more complicated is that this emptiness often has nothing to do with the wife herself. She can be a wonderful person. The problem is that over time, the two settled into a dynamic where they stopped truly seeing each other. They became employees of their own lives, fulfilling tasks, paying bills, raising children, but they forgot to cultivate the deep emotional connection they once had. This is one of the saddest aspects of many marriages. It's not that love is over. True intimacy died of starvation. It was replaced by unspoken obligations, expectations, resentments. And in the midst of all this, man feels increasingly empty, more disconnected from himself and from the other. When he shows interest in you, he's not necessarily looking for sex or romance. He wants to be seen. He is desperate for a genuine connection, for a conversation that goes beyond the superficial, for someone who looks him in the eye and recognizes the person behind the role of husband, father, provider. You represent the possibility of being whole again. But here's the trap. That void can't be filled by someone else. He never could. This is an internal work that only he can do. No woman, no matter how incredible she is, can fill a hole that exists within herself. As long as he doesn't make peace with himself, as long as he doesn't have the courage to be vulnerable and authentic within his own marriage, this emptiness will remain there, and he will keep searching outside for what can only be found inside. 4. When routine kills inner desire. Routine is the silent killer of desire. She arrives slowly, almost imperceptibly, settling in like a guest who never leaves. At the beginning of marriage, everything is new. Each day brings discoveries, interesting conversations, shared experiences. But little by little, life is organized into predictable patterns. Waking up at the same time, going to the same job, coming back to the same house, having the same conversations. And desire, that inner fire that makes life worthwhile, begins to wither. We're not just talking about sexual desire, although that happens too. We are talking about the desire to live intensely, to feel that every day matters, to wake up with expectation, with curiosity about what lies ahead. Routine kills all that. For many men, there comes a point where they realize they can predict exactly what the next week, the next month, maybe even the next year will look like. There are no more surprises. There is no more mystery. Everything is known, mapped, safe. And security, as important as it is, can also become a prison. The human psyche needs novelty to stay alive. It needs challenges, uncertainties, things that take us out of our comfort zone. Jung talked about the importance of keeping in touch with creative chaos, with that part of us that resists complete domestication. When all life becomes routine, this part withers, and man begins to feel that he is just existing, not living. It is in this context that interest in you gains strength. You represent the opposite of routine. You are unpredictable. Every meeting, every conversation brings something new. He doesn't know what you're going to say, how you're going to react, what expression you're going to have on your face. This unpredictability is electrifying. It makes him feel alive again. With you, he feels that anticipation he hasn't felt in years. That good anxiety before I see you. That butterflies in the stomach when he receives an answer from you. These are sensations that marriage no longer provides. Not because marriage is bad, but because it's impossible to maintain that level of emotional intensity when you see the same person every day, in the same circumstances, doing the same things. The problem is that he confuses this excitement with love or true connection. He does not realize that he is only reacting to novelty, to the unknown. It's the same brain chemistry we feel when we travel to a new place or start a different hobby. It's stimulating, but it's not sustainable in the long term. Eventually, even you would become routine. Because the problem is not in the marriage or in the wife. The problem lies in his inability to cultivate desire and passion within the framework of everyday life. There's a big difference between authentic desire and just hunger for novelty. Authentic desire is born from within. It is a creative force that moves us towards growth and fulfillment. The hunger for novelty is just boredom in disguise. It is the mind numbed by sameness, looking for anything that will make it feel something different. Many men in this situation do not realize that they could rekindle desire within their own marriage. Who could create novelty, surprise, mystery with his own wife? That they could travel together, try new things, have deep conversations about subjects they never explored. But this requires effort. It requires intention. It's much easier to seek out the easy excitement that a new person offers. So he continues in the routine that suffocates him. But he seeks in you small doses of life, small moments where he manages to escape the predictability that dominates his existence. You become an outlet, a drug he uses to endure the monotony of everyday life. And the more he seeks this outside, the less energy he has to transform his own life from the inside out, which is where true change would need to happen. 5. The fantasy that keeps him breathing. Let's talk about the devastating power of fantasy. For a man trapped in a life that no longer satisfies him, fantasy becomes oxygen. It's what keeps him waking up every morning, enduring the work he can't stand, returning to a house that has become just a building where he sleeps. The fantasy with you is the only thing that still brings color to an existence that has turned black and white. And don't be fooled into thinking that this fantasy is about sex. Sometimes it is, but often it goes far beyond that. He fantasizes about deep conversations you would have, about trips they would take together, about what it would be like to wake up next to you on a worry-free Sunday morning, about building a completely different life, where he would be a better version of himself. These fantasies are so real in his mind that he spends hours working out every detail. What would be the first place they would visit together? What kind of house would they have? How friends would react? He builds an entire parallel reality inside his own head. And in this reality, everything is perfect. There are no arguments about money. There are no boring responsibilities. There is no mother-in-law bothering you. There is only the two of you, happy, free, complete. Jung called this psychic inflation. This is when we lose touch with reality and completely lose ourselves in the internal world of images and symbols. Fantasy begins to carry more weight than real life, and the more time he spends in this imaginary world, the harder it is to return to reality. Because reality is harsh, it's disappointing, it's tiring. The fantasy is light, it's exciting, it's perfect. The danger of all this is that he begins to confuse fantasy with real possibility. He begins to believe that if he could be with you, everything would be exactly as he imagined. That you would be exactly the person who created in his head. That the relationship would be exactly as he fantasized. He doesn't realize that he's in love with an illusion, not with the real you. And you, whether you like it or not, feed this fantasy just of existing. Every little interaction is interpreted as confirmation that the fantasy is real. If you smile, he thinks it's because he feels something for him. If you make a joke, he thinks you have a special connection. If you ask him how he's doing, he believes you care in a way that no one else does. Everything is filtered through the lens of fantasy. This explains why sometimes his behavior seems completely disconnected from reality. Why does he misinterpret the signs, insist on situations where he should back off, act as if there is something between you when there clearly isn't? Because in his head there is. There is an entire, complete relationship going on in the plane of imagination. And this mental relationship is so vivid that he forgets that there is nothing like that on his side. The costume also serves as protection. While it's all in the imagination, he doesn't have to deal with the real consequences of his actions. He does not have to face the destruction of his marriage, the pain of his wife, the judgment of society, the financial and emotional mess that would be separating the whole life he has built. Fantasy is safe. It allows him to have the best of both worlds, the stability of marriage and the excitement of the forbidden. But there will come a time when keeping this costume will take too high a price, where the dissonance between what he imagines and what he really lives will become unbearable. And then he will have to choose. Either kill the fantasy and return to reality, making peace with the life he has, or he destroys reality to try to live the fantasy, running the risk of discovering that it was never real in the first place. 6. Why he seeks in you what he has at home. This is perhaps the most confusing part of the whole situation. Often, what he looks for in you is not something that is missing at home. It's something that's there, but he can't see it anymore. It's as if you've been blind to your own wife's qualities, but you can see those same qualities in yourself with crystal clarity. His wife may be funny, but he doesn't laugh at her jokes anymore. You make the same kind of joke and he thinks it's the wittiest thing in the world. She tries to have deep conversations with him, but he responds with monosyllables. You mention anything, and it opens up completely. She dresses up for him and doesn't get a compliment. You show up in the most ordinary outfit in the world and he is speechless. What's going on here? It's not that you're better than your wife. It's just that you're young, and novelty has immense power over human perception. When something is new, our brain pays full attention. Every detail is noticed, every feature is appreciated. But when something is familiar, our brain goes on autopilot. Stop paying attention. Stop valuing. Jung had a concept called the loss of transcendent function. This is when we lose the ability to see beyond the obvious, to find meaning and magic in everyday life. Marriage requires this transcendent function to stay alive. It requires the ability to look at the same person every day and yet see something new, something valuable, something worthy of admiration. But few can maintain this. Then something tragic happens. He has at home exactly what he is looking for abroad. There's a woman who could be your best friend, your confidant, your partner in every way, but he can't see anymore. His eyes pass by her without really seeing. It became part of the furniture, an element so constant that it became invisible. And then you appear, bringing these same qualities but packaged in a new person. And suddenly he thinks he has discovered something unique, something special, something he never had, when in fact it always has. I just didn't know how to value it anymore. It's like having a diamond at home and going out hunting for colored stones on the street, thinking you found a treasure. It doesn't diminish what you are or have, but it's important to understand that his interest isn't really about you. It's about his inability to see value in what's familiar. It's about having lost the ability to marvel at what's nearby. It is an internal fault of his, not an external quality of his. The tragedy is that if he really dropped everything to be with you, a few years later he would be in the same situation. You would become familiar. It would become every day. And he would stop seeing in you all those things that attracted him in the first place. And then I would look to someone else for what they have with you. The pattern would repeat itself forever, because the problem was never solved at the root. What he needs to learn is the art of seeing with new eyes what is old, to cultivate gratitude and admiration for what is constant, to understand that the true depth of a relationship does not come from the initial excitement, but from the ability to find infinite layers in the same person over time. But this requires emotional maturity that many men simply don't have. As long as he does not develop this maturity, he will continue to be attracted to the new, to the different, to what shines from afar. It will continue to ignore what it has and idealize what it does not have. And you, if you're not careful, can become just another on the list of things he intensely desired until he got it, and then lost all interest because the problem was never about having or not having. It was always about not knowing how to value. 7. Emotional hunger, disguised as attraction. Let's get straight to the point. Often what looks like attraction is actually emotional hunger in disguise. He's not attracted to you in the genuine sense. He is hungry. Hungry for attention, for validation, for feeling that you are still desirable, for confirming that you still have value as a man, and you represent food for this hunger that has been growing for years. Think about how physical hunger works. When we're really hungry, any food looks delicious. It doesn't matter if it's a gourmet dish or a simple sandwich. Hunger distorts our perception and makes us value anything that can fill it. The same happens with emotional hunger. When a man is emotionally hungry, any crumb of attention feels like a feast. And where does this hunger come from? It comes from years of feeling invisible within her own marriage. It comes from not receiving compliments, not listening to words of admiration, not feeling that you are special to someone. The wife is so busy taking care of the children, the house, the work, that she forgot to take care of his ego. And the male ego, as much as some deny it, needs to be nurtured. Men have a deep need to feel admired. It is not empty vanity. It is a legitimate psychological need. They need to feel that they are good at what they do, that they are strong, capable, that they have value. When this does not come from home, when the wife only points out the mistakes, only demands, only criticizes, this man will seek validation elsewhere. Always. And you, without even realizing it, offer this validation. Maybe you'll praise his work. Maybe you'll find his stories funny. Maybe you look at him with admiration when he talks about some achievement. To you, it's just polite gestures, basic courtesy. For him, it is water in the desert. It's someone finally recognizing their value after so long being treated as just another one. Jung understood that we all have archetypal hungers that need to be satisfied. The hunger for recognition, for belonging, for meaning. When these hungers are not satisfied in the appropriate places, we try to satisfy them inadequately. It's like satisfying your hunger for affection by eating sweets. It may temporarily relieve, but does not solve the real problem. His interest in you is this desperate attempt to satisfy a hunger that should be satisfied within marriage. But here's the problem. You'll never be able to completely satisfy that hunger, because she is a bottomless hole. Years of emotional neglect have created a void so great that no amount of outside attention will fill it. It's like trying to fill a leaky bucket. No matter how much water you put in, it will never be full. And there's more. This emotional hunger makes him mistake any kindness of yours for romantic interest. It makes him misinterpret every gesture, every word, every look. In his head, you're also interested, because he's so desperate for validation that he sees signs where there aren't any. It is a defense mechanism. If he believes that you want something too, it is easier to justify the inappropriate behavior. The hard truth is that he doesn't really want you. He wants to be liked. He wants to feel that someone wants him, admires him, values him. You are just the person who is available to design that need. It could be you. It could be any other woman who showed the least amount of attention. It's not personal. It's not about you being special. It's about him being emotionally hungry and you showing up with food. If you gave in, if you started something with him, you would quickly discover that his hunger is insatiable. It would need constant validation, attention all the time, perpetual reassurance that it is valuable. Because the emotional wound is too deep. It was not you who caused it, and it will not be you who will heal. Only he can do this, developing an internal source of self-esteem that does not depend on external validation from anyone. 8. The dangerous game between having and wanting. We come to the last point, perhaps the most disturbing of all. There is a psychological game going on in his mind that is both fascinating and frightening. It is the game between having and wanting. And this game explains why he doesn't quit his marriage, but also doesn't stop looking for you, because he discovered that he can have both. Or at least you can pretend you do. The human psyche works strangely when it comes to desire. We do not desire what we have. We desire what escapes us. That which is difficult, forbidden, unattainable. That's why desire within marriage dies. Because he has his wife. It is there, available, guaranteed. There is no mystery. There is no hunting. There is no achievement. And male desire, to a large extent, feeds on exactly that. On the search, not on possession. You, on the other hand, represent everything that he cannot have. And precisely because you can't have it, you become infinitely more desirable. It is the forbidden fruit. It is the line that should not be crossed. And the more impossible you are, the more he wants you. If you were completely approachable, if you made it clear that you were available, his interest would probably cool down. Because the game would be over. What keeps this game alive is the tension between the possible and the impossible. He flirts with the idea of being with you, but he doesn't go all the way. Because deep down he doesn't want to destroy what he has. He just wants to feel that he could destroy if he wanted to. You want to have the power of choice, even if you never actually make that choice. It is a game of ego, of control, of keeping alive the illusion that you are still free, even though you are imprisoned. Jung talked about the importance of integrating opposites within the psyche. But many men live this contradiction in a destructive way. They want the security of marriage and the excitement of the forbidden. They want the stability of having and the adrenaline of wanting. They want to sleep peacefully knowing they have a home, but they also want to wake up with their hearts racing thinking about someone they shouldn't. And you know what makes it even more complicated? Often he doesn't really want anything to happen. He just wants the possibility to exist. He wants to keep you there, in that gray area between friendship and something else. Because while everything is left in the imagination, he controls the narrative. You can fantasize without consequences. You can feel the thrill without the risks. Can be emotionally unfaithful without technically cheating. This is the most dangerous game of all. because he is using you as a piece on a board where only he knows the rules. It's keeping you in a place of uncertainty that serves its purposes, but it doesn't consider anything about you at all. Don't think about how it affects you, how it confuses you, how you might be wasting your time and emotional energy. The game is all about him, and there is an even darker aspect to all this. Sometimes what he really wants isn't you, but confirmation that he can still get it. It still manages to attract attention. It still manages to make someone interested. It still has value in the market, so to speak. You become a thermometer of his ego. Each time he notices his interest, even if imagined, he feels a dose of validation. He confirms himself as a desirable man. That's why he doesn't need anything to actually happen. He just needs to keep the flame burning enough to feel that he is alive, that he still has the power of seduction, that he is not just a boring and predictable husband. You nurture a part of his identity that marriage has allowed to wither, and as long as you let him, he'll stay in that game because it works perfectly for him. The question is, does it work for you? Are you willing to be a part of this game where you never win? Where do you get stuck in an emotional limbo, getting crumbs of attention from someone who will never give you more than that? Because behind all the seduction, all the looks, all the charged conversations, there is a man who chooses every day to return home with someone else. And even if he eventually chose you, even if he dropped everything and came running, what would you really have? A man who proved to be capable of living for years in lies and manipulation. A man who used someone else as an outlet instead of having the courage to solve his problems head-on. A man who, when the routine with you starts to tighten, will probably look for a third person to play the same game. Because the standard doesn't change just because people change. The pattern changes when the person who repeats it decides to do the necessary internal work. And few are willing to do this work. It's easier to blame the marriage, blame the wife, blame the circumstances. It's easier to believe that the problem is external and that the solution is to find the right person, when in fact the right person is that version of himself that he refuses to face. In the end, the game between having and wanting reveals a deep emotional immaturity. It reveals someone who has not learned that adult life requires choices, that you can't have everything. What commitment means exactly that, giving up certain possibilities to invest deeply in one. And that trying to have everything at the same time is not a sign of abundance but of inner emptiness waiting to be filled.